Coming to you from the mobile Hudson Media Group studio, right here in the Uribe compound, this is Talking Politics, and I am the professor, Fernando Uribe. There's a lot to discuss, so let's get started. Here's what I'm thinking about right now. Now, without doubt, ladies and gentlemen, as I'm sure you saw it on your smartphone or your PC, your Mac, or your tablet, even throughout the state of New Jersey, but for the most part, all throughout the country, protests continued, and even in our nation's capital. Now, again, protesters in Washington, D.C. this past weekend appended the new Black Lives Matter message, which was painted in enormous letters on a city street. And of course, that image was photographed and certainly dominated our news cycle for the past weekend. But we also saw some other messages being posted in that very same vicinity, which turned out to be defund the police. Now, of course, we know that that moment was caught on camera, and we've seen many individuals carrying signs repeating the very same message, not only in Minneapolis, but also New York, Los Angeles, Philadelphia, and even here in different marches throughout the state of New Jersey. Now, folks, very much like yourself, I was watching the footage on my smartphone and looking at all the different protests, which thankfully were all peaceful, even the local ones here, which were in Hoboken and, of course, in North Hudson. But without a doubt, ladies and gentlemen, one of the things that disturbed me was seeing signs like this, where it reads, defund the police. And can someone even explain to me how this is even remotely rational or sane? And here's a spoiler alert. It is not. All right? And this is precisely how you turn off people. Okay? And let me just give you some facts here to just sort of unravel this, because, I think what ends up happening, ladies and gentlemen, especially with many on the left, is, any empathy that you're trying to sort of acquire to your side, guess what? You lose it very quickly by sort of evoking ridiculous rhetoric and nonsensical narratives, which includes defunding the police. Now, I don't know about you folks. I think more times than not, when it comes to politics, messaging matters and your choice of words matter. And I think in this case, it was a very poor choice of words. Now, let me just give you some factors here as well, because listen, I'll be the first one to tell you, I very much want a reform when it comes to police tactics and practices. There's no question about that. I think we can all agree on that. Okay, and I think it's important to talk about this because this is the only way we're going to improve the service of our brave men and women in blue that serve our police departments. Okay, but this is the problem. And this is something that, whether you want to hear it or not, is going to have serious political ramifications leading up to the end of the year. Yes, folks, it's 5 months away. There's an election coming up on November 3rd. I'm sure you haven't forgotten about that. And I pretty much am certain this is a topic that's going to be very fresh in the minds of people for the rest of the year. Now, again, as I've said before, I certainly have my issues with police practices. And if you don't believe me, I think I've been consistent about it when I've talked about police departments down the Jersey Shore, right? We've all heard stories at some point of our lives, whether we've experienced them ourselves or we've heard about them from other people, right? When it comes to sort of predatory practices that exist by police departments, right? Such as checkpoints or speed traps. And I've denounced these practices, not just only on this program, but on my podcast, as well as other appearances on reputable media programs. All right. And one thing, folks, that we should all remember is we should want a better police force, a better trained police force, a better educated police force. And there's nothing wrong with saying that. That doesn't make me anti-police. It doesn't make me anti-law enforcement. It makes me someone who, again, not just am I a journalist, but I'm also a social scientist. And I believe in sound policy and rational policy making. And when I hear narratives such as defund the police, it's a very poor choice of words. If you're trying to win over moderate voters later on this year, do you think one side of the aisle is doing a good job of it? They're not. Now, again, we can all agree that issues about race are controversial, and issues about race oftentimes make people uncomfortable. They're not easy to talk about, folks, and I get that. And we've talked about it on not only on this show, but also on my podcasts. So without a doubt, it takes a certain type of tactfulness and I think a specific type of verbal precision to make sure that we can talk about this issue and be intellectually honest, but at the same token, be compassionate and be also just humane about it. But one of the things that I don't like hearing is this sort of far left rhetoric about defunding police departments or abolishing the police. And I'm not imagining this, folks, because I did see signs throughout the state of New Jersey at different marches and protests alike. Now, again, notwithstanding the criminality of rioting and looting that we saw in cities all across this country, thankfully, we didn't see too much of that here in the state of New Jersey. We saw it in Trenton a little bit a couple of weeks ago, and we saw some disorderly behavior down in Atlantic City. But by and large, the protests, especially here in Hudson County this past weekend, were very peaceful. And yes, people have a right to protest. They have a right to peacefully assemble. I don't disagree with that. And I certainly am not going to be one that wants to infringe upon anyone's right to do so. But when you're out there, be responsible with some of your rhetoric. Be responsible with the signs that you're making. Okay? Be responsible with what message you're trying to convey to people watching you at home. And when we listen to individuals that, again, subscribe to a very specific set of ideas and a specific ideology, guess what? You're not going to win people over by being so much of an extremist. And when I hear about ideas about defunding the police, folks, let's just sort of look at this from a policy perspective. Okay, when we talk about defunding police departments, do you realize that the tax dollars that go into funding police departments aren't just about, giving police officers more weaponry or gadgets or toys or riot gear? It's not about that. It's also about providing services to victims, to children, to battered women in our communities. That's what these programs also fund. Okay, this is what also gets sort of overlooked here. And when I hear, far left ideologues talking about defunding the police, well, guess what? You're also going to be harming those programs I just listed and many, many more. And do you think that's right? Do you think those individuals should have to be sacrificed or be sort of at the expense of your ideology or your movement? Of course not. Now, as it pertains to Black Lives Matter, I mean, listen, people are going to have opinions about them. And I would argue that at the national level, certainly parts of the movement have been hijacked. And this is one example where we're seeing language such as this that is very inflammatory, is very, I think, derogatory to many of the professionals that work in law enforcement, and more importantly, to city governments. Like, folks, for those that, that want to sort of advocate for defunding the police, well, if your house is being broken into, like, who are you going to call? The Ghostbusters? The A-Team? Or a social worker? No, you want the police. So without a doubt, for many on the left that seem to have this sort of misguided notion that defunding police departments or abolishing the police is a good idea, well, I don't know what it is you're smoking, but I'll tell you something. It must be very potent, and it must be really, really damn good, because my goodness, it's clouding your judgment like I've never seen before. Now, without a doubt, we know that this sort of debate will be ongoing for the rest of the summer. And rest assured, come the fall, whether it's the president or his opponent, Joe Biden, they're both going to have a lot to say as it pertains to reforming police practices. But let's also remember, folks, that police practices and what needs to be modified and, of course, revised completely goes back many, many years. It goes back even decades to some of sort of like the systemic inequities that exist in our criminal justice system. But that's a topic for another day. But for right now, it's important to realize that, folks, police departments are necessary. But more importantly, it's about training the right men and women for them. And if we can do that, we'll help alleviate a lot of the injustices that exist, not only in our criminal justice system, but in our day-to-day activities and interactions that you and I have with the police. So without question, folks, again, I don't know what would possess someone to even carry a sign like that. But if you're doing some honest and very sort of, important critical thinking, you're going to know you're on the wrong side of history if you're trying to even invoke that sort of narrative. And quite frankly, you know what? It's these sort of toxic people that want to run for office. It's these sort of toxic people that want to influence policy. I don't know about you. We need to do everything we can to stop them, because people like that don't have anywhere near or have no business being near policy making or even trying to influence what we should be doing in our communities, both at a local and state and even a national level. And that's what I'm thinking about right now. In the most recent edition of the 3-time award-winning podcast, Talk on the Hudson, which you can listen to live every Wednesday night at 9 p.m. by going to www.blogtalkradio.com/Talk on the Hudson, was the founder and publisher of the HudPost, Mr. James de Los Santos. You can check out all the excellent content that they bring you by going to their website, www.hudpost.com. Now, for over an hour, we spoke on a variety of very interesting topics, and here are some highlights for your consideration. First and foremost, we discussed the recent Black Lives Matter protest, which encompassed all of North Hudson this past weekend. Whether it was starting off in North Bergen and walking down Bergen Line Avenue, proceeding south into Guttenberg, West New York, and Union City, respectively, a lot of people showed up for a cause that matters to a great many. Let's check out what he had to say about it.
Because, what we saw in the last 10 days or so in different cities across the country, certainly at the epicenter right in Minneapolis, unfortunately, due to the wrongful death and let's be honest, murder of George Floyd at the hands of an extremely abusive police officer, who I hope gets prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law, as far as I'm concerned. He should rot in jail for the rest of his life. But what we've seen in the days since then, and we saw it with, even with peaceful protesters, we'd see some signs, James, that quite frankly didn't seem very productive. And I understand that, listen, being an academic, I'm all about words. I'm all about writing and the optics of things. And I think using terms like defund the police, I don't think are productive. I think if you want to use something different, or if you want to maybe clarify, not use specifically, I'm saying like generically, if you want to clarify that, that's one thing. But, for people that have been on not necessarily on the fence, but people that are caring about these issues, and rightfully so, I think we should care about equity in the criminal justice system. I worked in it for 10 years. I worked in jails for 10 years. I know firsthand about the inequities of our criminal justice. I know it because I lived it. I'm not some, lifelong student that just became an academic. I worked, and I just think oftentimes, you can lose people with a well-intentioned message when sometimes the narrative gets hijacked. And I think in a lot of cases, what we've been seeing over the last 14 days, we've been seeing peaceful protests and even people with signs advocating for things that may not make sense. I think that's how you lose people when you're making progress in raising awareness about issues. I just want to get your thoughts on that, James.
Sure. I did listen to you up in a monologue, and I respect some of your points. I would agree that the wording itself is not a way you win an election, but I believe this protest isn't about winning elections. Elections for us are short-term things, and I think this movement is more about changing the conversation and about how we actually implement police tactics in our community. So what defunding the police is about not about getting rid of the police completely. So if you hear the word abolish the police, I think that's pretty extreme. But when we're talking about defunding, what we're saying is that police, they have a hard job. I don't think anyone during the protest would tell you that cops do not have a hard job. But what we're saying is that they do too much. If there's a homeless man in the street, the cops get called. If there's see someone that is suffering from drug addiction, cops are called. I think if you've seen the video a couple of weeks ago, it was about a deer loose in Union City or Weehawken, and the cops are called. We just feel like money could be allocated to certain services and allow cops to do what they're supposed to do. Responding to murders, responding to domestic violence cases, things that they are actually trained in. And what we want to do is take a portion of the money that we give to the police departments and start implementing them for social programs.
Secondly, we discussed some of the accusations about hypocrisy that have been levied at New Jersey Governor Phil Murphy. Well, for the last 3 months, we've been ordered to stay home due to COVID-19, but over the weekend, the governor himself joined a protest nearby in central Jersey, which again sort of begs the question as to what exactly was the governor thinking when he decided to do this. Let's check out what James had to say about it.
When the governor in mid-March, the executive order, the stay-at-home order, he was very clear, along with the Attorney General, Gurveer Gawal, in anyone who is looking to disobey this would be met with extremely punitive results. And we saw that, whether it was a gym in South Jersey, whether it's a recreational club in Randolph, New Jersey, right? I think what bothers people is the idea that, okay, one thing is to be an advocate for a cause, as you just mentioned. I didn't go to the beach either. Memorial Day weekends, I'm with you. It's annoying. It's obnoxious to go down the shore. Why be around people that you don't need to be around? I could get sun on my porch.
Yeah, it's hung up out in my backyard. Nice sun. I did the backyard. Have it nice and done. So, agreed.
Exactly. And that's fine. But I think a lot of New Jerseyans have been pissed off because it's like, well, you've been really punitive on us for months now. And not to say, again, listen, I'm not trying to minimize the impact of COVID. I think we've seen it. I think we've all seen people we've lost as a result. But, part of the outrage, and this is where it hit me personally, because to me, I was fortunate enough to have a small gathering at a funeral home for my grandmother who passed a couple of weeks ago. And then being able to go see her. Oh, thank you. And then, of course, to go see her, buried at the mausoleum. But thousands of New Jerseyans didn't have that option. Thousands of New Jerseyans were waiting to go back to work or having their businesses open, and we've seen that small businesses are the lifeblood of an economy. And this governor has been very punitive about that. And then all of a sudden, like I said, Sunday he's out and about protesting. I think a lot of people, as I said, I think gave him hell, and rightfully so. I think he deserves hell for a lot of other reasons. But he got a lot of hell about it, and then mysteriously yesterday morning, he lifts the stay-at-home order. Of course, slowly but surely the state's reopening. I don't know, James. It seems like the governor heard footsteps, and he heard the backlash, and I think that's why he lifted the order. I don't think it's because of some grand epiphany he got. I just think he heard the footsteps, man.
I could agree. It could be very well be political on his end, but I believe if he didn't take a stance on this movement, he could have gotten backlash from his base. I think if we're talking politics, I would say that
sure.
He has to be careful what he's doing as far as how his optics are. But from the outside looking in, it's great. Objectively, not as a Democrat, not as a Republican, it's just great to see that he actually took a stance on this. And that he marched, As far as the stay-at-home order, that's, I'm not too well versed in how we're implementing reopening the economy and how the federal government plays a role in that. But it's just great that he took a stance.
Lastly, we discussed the importance of local journalism and how, quite frankly, with decline in publication with the Jersey Journal and the Hudson Reporter, respectively, how local journalism such as the HudPost, Talk on the Hudson, the Hudson County View, Hudson County TV, and others play such a pivotal role in helping to keep our local residents informed on a daily basis. Let's hear what you have to say about it.
It's just different forms of journalism. Listen, I think no one's going to mistake this program for not being opinion journalism. That's what it is, and I don't apologize for it. I think that I also try to get reputable guests on to have conversations and dialogues because it's important. But to your point about just the fact that we've been losing media here, it's tragic. Again, there was a point in time where I enjoyed getting the Hudson Reporter delivered and picking it up, reading the op-eds, reading the columns, because I looked at the Hudson Reporter like, wow, this is an exceptional local newspaper. Like, this is what you want a local paper to be like, and that's that's not the case anymore. You articulated the problems with the Jersey Journal. Again, another paper that for years, man, I would pick up regularly and say, you know what, let me pick up for 50 cents. I'll read it. Great local sports coverage, great op-eds, great local news. That's no longer the case, man. I'll be honest with you. I think it's
agreed.
Why so many residents, I think, are souring on local media because, again, many of us, yes, we love being on our smartphones. We love being on our Macs, on our PCs, our tablets. But not everybody's about that. I think people kind of miss those days of good, reputable print media, bro.
I agree. When I speak to especially the older people in our community, I say, hey, do you know I run HudPost? They have question marks all over their head, and I wish that there was a way that we can keep quality journalism and put it in paper, but the rising cost of paper and the decline of people wanting to spend marketing dollars on paper and magazines, and they want to spend it on Facebook and YouTube and the Instagrams of the world. And I think that's the problem. I think news organizations on NBC, ABC, their news was never their profit maker. And I think now we're in a stage of life where now they're using their news to make profits, and that's why we have sensational headlines and misleading clickbaits. And I think that's why us as local, I know you consider yourself an opinion journalist, but just us as local media, we need to have a responsibility to make sure that we put out facts, that we don't take sides, and your opinion, so you're allowed to take sides. But I'm saying as far as like a HudPost, I try not to take sides at all. And every day I get bashed for it. If I put up something about Hector, I get a call from the opposite side. If I put up something from the opposite side, I get a call from the progressive side. So
sure,
it's hard being the guy in the middle, just putting out the facts. But I'm staying consistent and just saying, hey, if I'm gonna build upon a reputation, I got to keep it. It's not a very lucrative business. I'm not driving around Mercedes. If you see me, my Honda Civic bumper is falling off.
Without a doubt, it was a very informative episode, and to listen to it in its entirety, you can always go to www.blogtalkradio.com/talkingtohudson, and you can listen to it from any PC, Mac, smartphone, or tablet. And now to some local stories for your consideration. And here's one that's a follow-up from something I discussed last week. Now, shout out to John Hines with the Hudson County Review for his report on this story. And it seems that the Board of Education trustee has gone on record and said that a recent controversial Facebook post was simply all about trying to keep Bayonne safe and protected. Now, in a video published on his Facebook page, Bayonne Board of Education trustee Michael Alonso, who has faced multiple calls for his resignation after very controversial social media posts, said he intended to start a conversation about how to keep the city of Bayonne, quote, safe and protected. Now, here's some facts here just to sort of unravel what's been going on here. Now, a recent 2-minute and 43-minute video was uploaded to his Facebook page, and it begins with comments from last week's special meeting of the Bayonne Board of Education, with trustees and members of the public calling for Michael Alonso to step down. Now, Alonso came under fire after posting on his Facebook page recently, asking, quote, where will the Bayonne riot start? Walmart, Quick Check, or ShopRite? In response to the nationwide protests sparked by the murder of Minneapolis man George Floyd. Now, another sign of a caricature of presidential candidate Joe Biden, changing the Black Lives Matter logo to Black Votes Matter, with Biden saying in it that he indeed fixed it. Now, the video, which only highlights the first post, of course, only shows Alonso going to the local Walmart and ShopRite thanking workers for their efforts during the pandemic. Now, folks, let me be very clear about this because I talked about it on last week's show, and it bears repeating once again. And I know Michael Alonso personally, as someone who's been involved in Hudson County politics for many, many years, as someone who was the chairman of the Hudson County Young Republicans for 5 years. I've dealt with Michael Alonso. I've had to endure him. I've had to tolerate a lot of his nonsense and his antics and his stunts, which, let's be very honest, that's what Michael Alonso has come to be known for. Theatrics, being bombastic, bloviating, if anything else. And it's not a good look for Michael. And I understand why many trustees and even parents and taxpayers alike have been calling for his resignation. I mean, at some point in time, Michael, listen, the chickens come home to roost when it comes to your antics and your stunts. And it's about time you take some responsibility. Listen, we're living in a very polarizing time. It's very volatile. And listen, I'm not going to get on someone for making controversial comments or for trying to stir the pot because, hey, I love to do that on this show as well as my podcasts. But folks, one thing you can never accuse me of is being irresponsible. And that's what Michael Alonso was being. And without a doubt, I think many Bayonne residents and even his fellow trustees in the Bayonne Board of Education are now taking him to task. And quite frankly, you know what? With all of his antics and all the stunts he's ever pulled throughout the years, guess what? That bill finally came due. Now, I don't know what's going to happen in the city of Bayonne, but I can tell you that just posting a video on his Facebook page isn't going to really fix things. Now, again, I don't want to sort of encourage anyone to force Michael Alonso to resign, but the pressure is mounting and the backlash has been considerable. And no offense, if anyone's to blame, it's really Michael Alonso himself. I think it's time for Michael to sort of look in the mirror and decide what's best for him, but more importantly, what's best for the Bayonne Board of Education and ultimately for the children and the parents in the Bayonne School District. And now let's move on to Jersey City and Hoboken respectively, where both Hoboken Mayor Ravi Bala and Jersey City Mayor Stephen Fulop continue to be in the headlines. And now, for once, it's actually not something that's too controversial. And once again, a shout out to John Hines with the Hudson County Review for the reporting on this story. Now, both mayors have announced plans for a combined bike sharing program for the city of Jersey City and also the city of Hoboken. Now, again, it's sort of making a commitment to go out and to bid when it comes to selecting the same company as it pertains to this bike sharing program. Now, in a statement released this week by both mayors, quote, both Hoboken and Jersey City are leaders in advancing alternative transportation options, and we are thrilled to partner together to utilize the same regional bike share program for our cities. Now more than ever, a greater number of people are relying on shared transportation for essential services, employment, and more, and a regional approach will substantially improve the quality of life for all of our residents. And as our communities continue to adapt to COVID-19, this coordinated effort will provide residents and visitors with healthy, socially distanced alternatives to mass transit. Now, without a doubt, seeing this project come to fruition and seeing both Mayor Fulop and Mayor Bala respectively working together on this, I think is really a breath of fresh air. As we know that COVID-19 has hit these communities very harshly. And without a doubt, when it comes to keeping people socially distant and more importantly, keeping people healthy, I think without doubt, this bike sharing program, I think, will be a welcome relief for everyone involved. And again, I have to give credit where it's due to both mayors in Hoboken and Jersey City together for working on this project and ultimately keeping their taxpayers and keeping their constituents at the top of their priority list. We might always think they do that, but believe it or not, folks, they are trying. And in this case, as we all know, this is one project that I think everyone, regardless of political party or ideology or even viewpoints, can all agree on is definitely a good thing for both cities here in New Jersey's most densely populated county. I'll keep you posted in the weeks and months ahead on this story and, quite frankly, how beneficial it's going to be. And hopefully it's a program that'll work, and I'm sure it'll have some inconveniences at first, but hopefully it'll work out for the betterment of all Hudson County residents. And lastly, let's go to North Bergen. And a great job by Daniel Israel with the Hudson Reporter for his report on this story. Now, it seems that North Bergen will indeed be simplifying the process for restaurants to provide outdoor dining. Now, as New Jersey gradually will be easing restrictions put on businesses as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, the Township of North Bergen has put forward procedures in place to make it easier for restaurants to operate under the new guidelines. Now, Governor Phil Murphy signed an executive order permitting outdoor dining with certain health and safety restrictions beginning Monday, June 15th. Now, the governor's office went on to release a statement saying, quote, restaurants and bars throughout New Jersey have immensely been cooperative with necessary public health measures that were placed upon them while battling the COVID-19 pandemic. Allowing outdoor dining and the expansion of alcohol serving areas will allow restaurants and bars to begin welcoming customers back while continuing to comply with the necessary social distancing guidance. Now, according to the executive order by the governor, establishments will be required to follow a number of COVID-19 health and safety protocols issued by the Department of Health in Trenton, including a limit of 8 customers per table and a requirement of at least 6 feet of distance between parties. Now, per the reopening guidelines, restaurants will be limited to outdoor seating only for the immediate future. And to cope with this, North Bergen has simplified and streamlined the application and approval process for outdoor seating at eating establishments. Now, without a doubt, the township is also keeping in mind that it's important to waive all application fees for these outdoor restaurants and seating because of the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic. Now, the mayor of North Bergen, Nicholas Sacco, and the township administration have indeed been working hard to support local businesses and to help them succeed during this ongoing pandemic. And without a doubt, ladies and gentlemen, if you frequent North Bergen as much as I do, a lot of great restaurants to visit there, and certainly a lot of great restaurants to eat at. And without a doubt, as we're trying to sort of regain some sense of normalcy during COVID-19, and as New Jersey is slowly but surely reopening, it's great to see a town here in North Hudson putting the necessary parameters and I think protocols to make sure that residents can go out and eat, especially with the nice weather. And since summer is basically almost upon us, to make sure that everyone can enjoy their food and enjoy their entertainment in a very safe and responsible manner. So great job there by the Township of North Bergen to really, sort of take the lead on this issue, because you know what? It could certainly be an example for nearby municipalities as the summer months are quickly approaching. And that's our show for this week. To check out all the excellent programming brought to you by the Hudson Media Group and NJ On Air, please go to the websites www.hmgtvshows.com, www.livestream.com/hmgtv, and www.njonair.com. Don't forget to like the Hudson Media Group and NJ On Air on Facebook and follow them both on Instagram and Twitter. And live every Wednesday night at 9 p.m., you can check out the 3-time award-winning podcast, Talking the Hudson, by going to www.blogtalkradio.com/Talking the Hudson. And of course, you can listen to it from any PC, Mac, smartphone, or tablet. And never forget, if it's unbiased, unfiltered, and unafraid, you know it's always talking politics right here with the Hudson Media Group and NJ On Air. I'm Fernando Uribe. Thank you so much for watching.
Don't forget to catch Fernando's podcast at blogtalkradio.com/talkonthehudson. new episodes available every Wednesday night at 9 p.m.